Dc34, Mindex City. Soul-touching and life-enhancing stories. Mindex City. Mindex City on the planet of Mindex, governed by the Mindex Council, was a very busy city. Day and night everything was in motion. Lights were always flashing and the noise was tremendous. The buildings were from a very modern technology. They were skyscrapers, reaching and even passing the clouds. Some were floating and connecting on different levels by glass tunnels. Mindex City was, however, a city where the people lived under strange conditions. Nobody looked at one another, and so it created the feeling of a city of robots. Streets, however, were always busy with traffic and people constantly moving about, but there was no feeling of life, no interaction. Large solar cars were soaring through the air on one level and smaller ones on another level, mostly delivering packages and groceries. Drive-through counters could be found throughout the city for any imaginable service, banks and beauty salons, fast food chains and so on, but in fact there was no need to leave the house, for anything and everything could be delivered to one's doorstep. Then there were spaceship restaurants, which could fly to the people's apartments to provide their services. People were also picked up by the restaurant itself and after having taken a meal, flown back to their home. It was on this planet that the invention of the smallest computer ever was made. The size was no bigger than the wing of a fly. It was an incredible computer, as it had no needs for a keyboard. It worked merely by thought. No matter what you were thinking of, you were channeled straight away into the computer program and having access to whatever you were looking for or thinking about. It was like what we know as the internet, but with more instant gratification, because you were there instantly and you could zoom in on the detailed information by just thinking about it. In short, it was an endless shopping center for everything and everybody was busy with this kind of life. Every inhabitant was given this computer straight after their birth, and it was implanted in their skull. So most people, for this reason, were busy only playing with their own built-in computer. Now you understand why people did not bother to look at each other's eyes, and why they were passing each other as if they were just robots. Bumping into each other did not happen as their computer helped them to navigate the streets. Also, people living together did not pay attention to one another anymore. They as well were busy interacting 24 hours a day with their own computer. In Mindex City, individuals were put up in pairs and family expansion was completely controlled by the Mindex Council. The relationship of the two individuals and with their children was of the same unsocial kind, and they lived like robots in the same home. The health of these people was not good at all, because everyone was just busy with their own computer. No one paid attention to eating well and healthy foods. Because of this, many problems arose. People started experiencing problems with their heart, which were pumping too fast or skipping beats. Their limbs, eyes and ears started to fail in one way or another. But all that was not a problem to them. Their inventiveness and high technology allowed them to replace or remove parts that were not functioning well and replacing them with parts operating through small computers. In addition to this, most inhabitants also looked like robots, for they had used quite a lot of their technology on their bodies. Imagine passing someone who had lost an eye and now had been replaced by a little machine in the socket. Those who had lost an arm or a leg now replaced with an artificial limb. Many people's bodies looked more machine-like than human. Each year all inhabitants of the city had to go to Mindex Central Station, located outside the city, to update their computer information. The Mindex central computer system was guarded and protected by a highly armed police force. The people were brought in to the central station with special trains and buses under strict supervision of this police force. Once at the station, the people would be guided to single rooms where they would be hooked up to the main computer so their implants could be updated with the latest information. All this was monitored and selected by the Mindex Council. After this, the police force again would supervise the transport back to the city, to their respective areas and neighborhoods. One morning, two citizens, Alexei and Nova, woke up by a big noise and the shaking of the building they were living in. They both jumped up from their sleeping board, looked out of the window, and in their backyard they saw a small round foreign shining object, the size of a ball, and smoke was coming from it. Their hearts started racing. Was more going to fail? Thoughts were racing through their mind. Why did their computer not warn them, just as it did prevent them from bumping into each other on the street? Why didn't the main computer foresee this? Because their hearts were racing from the shock and the many questions which were racing through their heads, their computer kicked in telling them, "It is time for you to replace your heart. This part is not performing well." Even though their hearts kept racing, they did not pay attention to the computer and kept on looking at the object. A lot of light and sound and energy vibrations were coming now as beaming lights out of this ball. All this vibration, which was visible, moved in the direction of Alexei and Nova and surrounded them. Suddenly they were struck by lightning coming out from this field around them, and they both fell down on the ground unconscious. When they woke up, the lights and sounds had vanished. They quickly realized that the lightning and the total different energy vibrations had shut down their individual computers. It had frozen their files, blocking access to them completely. They looked at each other as if they saw each other for the first time. And really, that's what it was. Through all these years of being busy with themselves, they just regarded each other as another body or obstacle to avoid, not something to consider looking at. They held hands, helped each other up, and they laughed when they bumped into each other. As the days went by, they started to discover each other more and more. They discovered their planet, their surroundings, and saw another world, outside and inside of themselves. They had never taken the time to look at each other or themselves like this before. It gave them an inspiration, and very quickly they figured out that they had been controlled by Mindex Council, who kept everyone on a leash. Now, as their computers were not working, they realized that it was only installed in their head to give them information about what Mindex Council thought they should eat, what they should buy, should think and feel. Now they also understood that their health had been going down, and why they had only considered replacing body parts with computer-operated parts, because they were so out of touch with their body. Mindex Council had foreseen that the sicker you were, the more money you would be spending on robotic and computer parts, so-called feeling better again. Now being busy inside their own heads all the time, they had stopped communicating, and this was also a trick of Mindex Council, who just wanted to gain control so that people would not question or rebel or go in different directions. Everyone was under control, from the company director down to the shoe shiner. No one was allowed to think or feel for him or herself. But now, with their mind more free, Alexei and Nova were becoming more and more different, and they felt that they didn't fit in anymore in the high technology, fully controlled robot world. They realized that they had to be careful, For if the armed police found out about the change in them, their lives would be in danger, or another operation would be at hand to correct the change. It was also hard for them to see the other people in their captive state, eating incorrect foods and the children being completely manipulated from their birth. After several months, they could not bear it any longer. The strain of having to keep this freedom a secret and not being able to change anything in their world, it was heavy. They found out that there was another part on Mindrex's planet where nobody seemed to live, because everybody was controlled and brainwashed to live and to stay in the city. This was a part of the planet that was mostly rainforest, which kept some balance regarding the planet so that people could live. This was not in their computer information. Curiosity had been wiped out, making sure that the rainforest would not be discovered. If people should move to those difficult, inaccessible areas, they would be difficult to control and to follow. They would live a more natural and therefore healthier life, and government would not make any money on them. People would become independent and self-supportive and uncontrollable. Secretly, Annexi and Nova started moving their things and necessary belongings, tools and books and so on, and finally moved deep inside the rainforest. Slowly their health became better. They built a huge treehouse and had children and lived a good life. One afternoon, as the family was sitting together at a table, they were startled by an enormous noise next to their house. Another of these shining round objects had hit. A similar experience happened. Vibrations, electrical light. Everyone, especially the children, watched it in amazement. They moved in to watch right behind their parents. This time they were not knocked out unconsciously, but suddenly they heard a vague voice growing in clarity. "Hello, Annexi and Nova, dear children. How are you? And how do you know our names?" asked Annexa and Nova. "I am Vardos from Mindex, and I know your names because I organized the first object in your backyard, and I have been following your progress for some time." "So it was you who freed us from this computer and robot life?" replied Annexi. "Exactly. And I have been watching the planet and your inhabitants for centuries, and I came to pick up individuals ready to live on my planet, which is a paradise of nature, and there is plenty of room. You have been living in harmony with nature and have discovered another world on your planet. I am planning for some more objects to free more people, but they will need help, and I'm asking you to take this task upon you as soon as they reach the rainforest." "But," said Nova, "why not terminate the entire Mindrex Council? Why not destroy the city and the main computer?" Vardos answered, "It is not my task to bring confusion and chaos, for this surely would take place. I am just a servant, and this is my mission." "So, what are we supposed to do?" asked Annexa and Nova. Vardos replied, "As soon as your children are teenagers, I will start the second phase of this project and free many inhabitants. But you need to assist and guide them to live in harmony in this deep forest. Remember, it will take a lot of patience. Therefore, I had to wait for you to have children first, to better understand the concept of what is patience all about." "But," said Nova, "the armed police force will discover that people are missing, and they will take us, force us to go back, and if we refuse—" "Do not worry," said Vardos. "I have planned a computer virus which will occupy government and police force, forcing them to change software and decrease security. Also, my light coming from this special object will protect all of you in the forest. The police will be unable to detect you." The voice slowly faded away, said, "You will receive instructions when necessary, when the time is right." They only could hear the last words, "Goodbye, good luck." Years later, when their children were in the teenage years, over a period of days inhabitants started showing up at the edge of the forest. Vardos had shut down their computers. They were received with open arms and guided in ways to live in harmony with nature deep in the rainforest by Anexia Nova and their children. Most inhabitants, because of the fresh air, exercising, of planting, building homes and eating healthy foods, became stronger and healthier day by day. Then one day Vardos showed up again to pick up inhabitants who had learned to live completely in harmony with themselves, each other and nature, and they were transported to the planet Mindex, where no computer regulating government existed. Mindex was the planet being a paradise of nature, and only those could live there who had learned to do so. Slowly all these people were completely freed, and you can guess who he picked up first. Yes, Anexia Nova and their children, who lived from that day on in a more happy and peaceful world, completely content, never thinking back to the lives they once lived. What the story could bring us. The mind, which is actually meant to be a communication device for our soul, has been enslaved by the senses, and these senses are controlling us now with all our desires and wants. The mind at the present moment is like a computer controlling us completely and not allowing us to be free. Man talks a lot about freedom, but as long as our soul is connected to the mind and not 100% directed by the life force and creator itself, we cannot actually speak about any freedom.